So I'm out taking some photos. I'm gonna take you guys along with me, and we're gonna talk about what I'm gonna be doing to improve my photography in 2025. So my goal is to get out and take at least one intentional photograph every single day. And so far I've done that, but it's only been a few days at this point. And my goal with that is the only way you get better at anything, not just photography, is through practice. And by incorporating taking photos into my daily routine, there's really no way I'm not going to see some kind of improvement. And what I mean by taking an intentional photo is not just pulling out your phone, randomly snapping a photo, checking it off the list and saying, oh, there's my photo for the day. What I mean by taking an intentional photo is I want to put effort into the composition. I want to make an attempt not to necessarily take a good photograph, but to at least make one that's interesting, to at least put effort into finding something interesting. Even if it's just a busy day and I'm around the house, I can still try to take an interesting photo. I do think intentionally trying to take photos every single day will really improve my skills as a photographer over time. And I encourage you to do the same, whether that's with your favorite digital camera, your favorite film camera, or even your phone. I think what's important is just to get out there and be thinking like a photographer. Well, not all the photos I take or you take will be great. That's not really the point. The point is to get in the mindset of being a photographer, make that part of your daily routine, and I think the rest will follow. I strongly encourage you to take this up as well if you're looking to improve your photography skills. And while I will be taking photos every single day, personally, I'm not going to be sharing daily progress updates on social media. But if you want to, that's great. I won't try and stop you. For me personally, I know all the photos won't turn out, so I don't want to feel the pressure to post something every single day that I'm not really proud of. And I really don't think that modern social media really rewards good photography anymore. My experience is mostly with Instagram, and up until maybe the last 6 months, I'd taken quite a long break from posting to Instagram. And when I came back, I really found that it's not a great platform for photographers anymore. I don't really have a very big following, but if you look at your stats, I'm sure yours are similar. I've seen this reiterated many times, that your photos aren't even shared with your followers, really. If you're lucky, maybe 20% of your followers will even see your photo. And what they do seem to reward is making videos and posting every single day. And as a photographer, having to post every single day, you're not going to post your most quality work. It just isn't going to happen. So I think if your goal is to be successful on social media, that's one thing. But if your goal is to be a good photographer, I think you'll need to avoid the type of content that social media is rewarding these days. But if your goal is to get more Instagram followers, that's fine. It's just not my goal. My goal is to grow as a photographer. And I think I will occasionally post some of the top photos, maybe once a month. The other thing I'm going to do to challenge myself is choose a focal length each month. What inspired me to do that was reading a book by Ted Forbes. So for January, I'm going to do 35 millimeters. My 35 millimeter prime is not weather sealed, and it's kind of rainy today. So what I've done is I've just taped off my zoom lens at 35 millimeters. The whole point of shooting with a single focal length is to really get used to that focal length, so that just when you're looking at something, you kind of have an idea of where you need to stand to get the framing that you want. Kind of makes it second nature. My goal with shooting a fixed focal length each month is to try and gain an intuitive understanding of framing with different focal lengths. I'm also hoping to discover which focal length really works for me. Having started out with zoom lenses and kind of just switched around, I don't feel like I've spent much time really figuring that out, and that's something I really want to do. And if you just have one lens, that's fine. If it's a zoom lens, you could try shooting specific focal lengths within its range. Or if you just have a single prime lens, you could just spend the year really getting to know that one focal length. When I first started taking photography really seriously, I would bring my camera bag, I would bring multiple lenses, and I would spend several minutes changing lenses throughout the day. I guess as I've matured as a photographer, if I even want to call it that. I typically only put on one lens, and I'm kind of stuck with it. And I feel like that forces you to make certain decisions. I think those limitations of having a fixed focal length, having to physically move your feet to get a different framing, or just not even being able to take the frame that you initially wanted to, can force you to get creative. I think in general that has caused me to grow as a photographer and take better photos. I think when you're forced to think creatively, when you're forced to think differently than your initial intuitions, sometimes I think that's one of the best ways to grow as a photographer, to limit yourself. Say some other things that I'm going to try and do this year is to read more photography books. I mentioned Ted Forbes earlier, and that's kind of what inspired me to limit my focal length. And I've been reading his book, and so far I'm really enjoying it. It's more about photography as an art rather than how to use your camera. So if you're interested in that, I would highly recommend checking that out. If you have photography New Year's resolutions of your own, or you'd like to join me in mine, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Maybe we can keep each other accountable and actually accomplish 365 days of photography. That would be great. For anyone who's a returning viewer to this channel, this is a very different type of video than I've made before. I just really felt inspired to do this and thought I'd share it with you. I'm also testing out some new recording gear as I'm doing this, so this might look terrible as I'm getting used to this new gear. As far as what's coming for the channel in 2025, I think I've got more projects in mind than I could realistically do. And I'm also going to continue doing some educational content. I recently launched the first video in a series called Photography Made Simple, and it did a lot better than I was expecting. What inspired me to make that video was a conversation I had with a friend who's been doing photography and videography for a while. I would say they're far from a beginner, but they've never had any formal education on the subject. It made me realize that I think there are some gaps in the way that photography is normally taught. My goal is to try and fill those gaps in the way it's taught to the best of my ability, to try and share things that I've learned over many years of photography and photography classes, and try and simplify it in a way anyone can understand, whether you've been doing photography for years or you just picked up a camera for the first time yesterday. Anyway, I hope you join me on this photography learning journey, and you dedicate some time in 2025 to improving your photography skills. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video or are excited for what's coming up, please consider liking and subscribing. I'll see you next time.